2 to 3 times a year, there is a week that alters the fantasy season. Week 3 felt like one of those weeks. With all the chaos that just happened, you might need some help for your fantasy team, and one of the best ways to fix an ailing team is to go buy low on some players whose value isn't as high as it should be. I got 10 names, actually maybe even more than 10 names to be honest, that I think you need to go try to buy low right now. Not to mention, as always, I'm going to give you some ideas of players you can send away to get these guys. But you know what the easiest buy low in fantasy is? To subscribe to the Fantasy Endgame. 70% of people who watch this channel are not subscribed. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Please help us get there. If you've gotten any value, entertainment, anything, even if you just want to clown on us, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, help us to get to 100K by the end of the season. We'd greatly appreciate it. Now, I always use Fantasy Calc in these trade videos, and sometimes people say like, oh, that trade would not even be fair. So look, I want to kind of explain a little behind the scenes here. I'm using Fantasy Calc, and what they do is you can see right here, algorithmically generated rankings and trade values calculated from almost 5 million trades. You can see it changing right there. It is actually in real time looking at trades that are being made across all sleeper leagues that it tracks and valuing players based on who they're being traded for or traded away for. So look, if you disagree with some of the values here, take it up with Fantasy Calc. They're using real player data here, so this is how most fantasy players feel about these guys. And then I also will say I'm using redraft, 12 team, full PPR here. If you're in a non-PPR league, these values are going to be drastically different, but they should be fine for any half PPR or PPR league. And let's start with rookie Ashton Jeanty. Look, this is a guy, if somebody drafted Ashton Jeanty in your league, which obviously somebody did, they probably spent a first round, maybe an early second round pick on him, and they are in full-fledged panic mode right now because they haven't gotten anything close to that for this guy. But this is the time we strike because we don't have to give up a first or second round type of pick to go get him. Look, Ashton Jeanty has certainly been disappointing this year, but he's still the RB20 in expected fantasy points per game, and he's a rookie. We know it takes time sometimes for these rookies. We see it every year. Rookies start slow, even good ones like Ashton Jeanty, and then they come on down the stretch. Now, certainly there are worries here with the offense, with the offensive line. I get all that, but everybody's worried. That's why we can get him at a discount right now. Look, Ashton Jeanty, probably not going to pay off his first round or second round ADP this year, but I still think his ceiling could be top 10 running back. I think his floor could at least be top 20, top 15 running back, and we're getting him at a discount because we're not paying those elite prices anymore. And when we look at the chart here, some players I would trade away. Alvin Kamara. Look, Alvin Kamara has name recognition. He's been okay this year, but we know Alvin Kamara probably going to fade down the stretch, while Jeanty probably going to rise. I would just gamble on the rookie. Same with Breece Hall. He's got name value, but I'm getting a little concerned after that week 1 where it looked like, okay, this is Breece Hall's backfield. We're starting to see more of a split here. The offense, can it really support Breece Hall? I'd rather just gamble on Ashton Jeanty. And then if somebody in your league still believes in Brian Thomas Jr. and just wants to get out from under Ashton Jeanty, I'd probably just flip BTJ for Jeanty at this point. I mean, these guys are 2 of the biggest busts in fantasy this year, but at least I know Ashton Jeanty has the potential to get better. I'm not sure how it gets better for BTJ, to be honest. All right, let's move down the list a little bit to a couple of Panthers teammates, and let's start with Chuba Hubbard. I feel like Chuba Hubbard is not really getting the respect he deserves, coming off a not so great game where Rico Dowdle did just vulture a touchdown, but this guy is 8th among all running backs in expected fantasy points per game. He's a clear workhorse here, and people are worried for a couple of reasons. Number 1, the Panthers offense. Like, can this Panthers offense support him? And then number 2, of course, Dowdle did score that touchdown. He hasn't had a monster season, but Chuba's been good. Even this last game, I was like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous about Chuba. That Falcons front is really good. He looked great in that game. I think at this point, I'm just looking at Chuba like, this is a guy just lock into my lineup and don't even think about the matchup. Again, I think top 10 is well within his range of outcomes. Certainly top 15 here. We don't have to give up that much for him. And then same with Ted McMillan, another rookie here. We're talking about a rookie who is the clear undisputed wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's 15th among all wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game. It's going to get better. There's going to be a boom game pretty soon. And again, we know rookies oftentimes get stronger in the second half. Teams trust the rookies more in the second half. I think Ted McMillan can still take off this year and be at least a top 24 wide receiver. And again, maybe even a top 20, top 15 wide receiver. And when we look at the players being valued either ahead of them or right around them, again, I will say Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall. If I can trade these guys away to get either of these Panthers players, I'll take them. I don't think either of these guys are going to be better than Chuba or Ted McMillan, and probably going to be worse, especially as the season goes on. And then a player being valued, a little lower than Chuba here. Maybe this is not enough to get Chuba, but Ted McMillan, Tyreek Hill, he just scored, had a nice game. He's had like 2 nice games in a row. He's got that name value. If I can go ahead and get rid of Tyreek Hill right now in this offense that doesn't look like it's going to support Tyreek Hill as a high-end wide receiver. Didn't even reach 50 yards in that game. Just give me the rookie wide receiver who definitely could get stronger as the year goes on, or a running back that I feel like can be a top 15, top 10 running back all season long. All right, now let's move down a little bit to 2 running backs and a tight end here. And let's start with Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren quietly has been really good the last 2 weeks, and people don't really realize it. This guy is the RB5 in expected fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. He's the RB11 in actual fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. But because he's stuck in this Steelers offense, because he's not a splashy player, I don't even think he scored over the last 2 games, if I can recall. Maybe he did in week 2, but I don't remember. But he definitely didn't score this last week. People aren't really valuing him very high, and he's in this Steelers offense. Then you see a couple spots behind him, TreVeyon Henderson. Look, I'm not ready to say TreVeyon Henderson is taking over the backfield again. Got a little too excited, I think after week 2 or week 1, whatever it was. But what did we see here in week 3? Ramondre Stevenson fumbles at the goal line because that's what he does. Antonio Gibson fumbles because that's kind of what he does too. And then TreVeyon Henderson got a ton of run at the end of the game there. The second half of the game, had 11 carries. Okay, he didn't do a ton with the work that he got, but if he's going to get the usage, we know better days are ahead. And look, this offense is not utilizing the wide receivers. It's utilizing the tight end and the running backs in the passing game. TreVeyon Henderson still has tons of upside. And again, he's a rookie. We got to give him a little bit of time here. But I'm ready to buy low right now. And then I'll say George Kittle. He's eligible to come back next week. Not here in week 4, but in week 5. But if the person who has George Kittle, maybe they picked up Juwan Johnson and they're like, I'm just fine with this guy. Or maybe they picked up some other tight end and they're like, I'm just fine rolling with this guy, and they need help somewhere else. Go try to get yourself an elite tight end right now with George Kittle, because once the team says he's playing this week, like whether it's week 5, week 6, the buy low is closed. Nobody's going to trade George Kittle. This is your last chance probably to go get George Kittle. And again, when we look at players being ranked higher than these guys, Deebo Samuel, come on, Deebo Samuel, like what are we really getting here? He had a couple nice games. He'll probably have some nice games. But if I could flip Deebo Samuel for any of these guys, I'm doing it. And same with DK Metcalf. Look, he's living off touchdowns the last 2 games. 30 yards this last game. The Steelers are throwing to wide receivers at the second lowest rate in the entire league. It's not going to happen for DK Metcalf in this offense. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. had a very strong week 1. People still feel like this guy could break out. But it's the same old Cardinals. They're actually targeting wide receivers at the lowest rate in the entire NFL. Trey McBride will still be fine because he's Trey McBride. He's a stud, and Kyler targets the tight end. But Marvin Harrison probably going to be the same guy we saw last year, where it's like he pops off, has a nice game, and then he disappears for weeks. I'd rather just have these guys. All right, now let's move down a little bit to a running back and a wide receiver that I think are great buy lows right now. That's Bill, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt of the Commanders, and Michael Pittman, wide receiver for the Colts. Let's start with Bill. Sure, we didn't see the usage we wanted to see in week 3. We thought, okay, now they have to give him the ball. Nope, Chris Rodriguez started the game, but Bill did play more snaps than him. He did run more routes than him, and I just think he's the better player here. And again, he's a rookie. Rookies aren't always going to have full trust from the staff early in the year. As the season goes on, he's going to get more trust, more usage. He's going to get better. I want to buy low on him now before he has that big game at some point. And I still feel like Michael Pittman being completely slept on this year. If you take out week 2 where he had to face Pat Surtain and the Broncos, he's the wide receiver 8 in fantasy this year. Now, I will say he's overachieving his expected fantasy points by quite a bit. There could be some regression here, but he's clearly the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Josh Downs, a complete afterthought. It's basically just him and Tyler Warren, and then every now and then a deep shot to like Alec Pierce or A.D. Mitchell or something. Now, sure, this is an offense. JT's the cog that gets this offense going. He's going to be a stud, but there's enough here for Michael Pittman to be a serviceable wide receiver 3 with the upside for more. And again, when we look at players being valued higher than these guys or right around them, DeAndre Swift. Look, DeAndre Swift has had a pretty okay start to this season. He's the workhorse running back for the Bears for now, but he just faced the easiest run defense he's going to face all year probably, and hasn't really looked that good this year. Wouldn't surprise me if Monangai starts coming on, so I would be happy to trade away DeAndre Swift right now, or Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore. I mean, come on, like Jalen Waddle again. He scored on Thursday night, so he's kind of got some value. He scored the week before, 2 straight games with a touchdown, but what's the upside in this offense? And again, DJ Moore, he's coming off a nice game. He scored, he got running back carries. Like, maybe there's a way to sell DJ Moore here, but that was Caleb's probably the best game he's going to have all year. A 4-touchdown game, lit up the Cowboys, and he was just kind of okay. I'm ready to trade away DJ Moore right now. And now let's move down a bit lower. Some guys I like kind of all lumped together here that I think are all good buy lows right now, like Quentin Johnston, Chris Godwin, Matthew Golden, Dalton Kincaid. I think these guys are all very solid buy lows right now. Let's start with Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, it sounds like he's going to play this week. This is it. This is your last chance to go get Chris Godwin. Well, I may not say that because he may start off slow, so you may have more chances after this, but I would rather just go get him now. We know he's probably going to play this week or next week. Yes, he's probably going to be limited, but Mike Evans is out for an undetermined amount at the time I'm recording this. It's just basically Emeka Egbuka is the last man standing. They're going to need Chris Godwin in this offense. Let's not forget this guy was second in fantasy points per game last year before his injury. And then QJ, it looks like the breakout is actually happening. It's not like he's just popping off because he's scoring a bunch of touchdowns. This guy is 23rd in expected fantasy points for wide receivers. Last week, 10 targets despite facing the Broncos. He's a big part of this offense, and the Chargers are throwing to the wide receiver more than any team in the NFL. It's basically all the passes go to wide receivers, basically. A little bit to running backs, almost none to tight ends. So, yeah, I know he's in this offense with 3 wide receivers, but it looks like the breakout is happening. Let's go buy low. And then Matthew Golden didn't quite break out last week, but it does look like the breakout is also happening here. First game without Jaden Reed last week. He ran the second most routes, had the 3rd highest targets per route run, led the team in receiving, and he gets the Cowboys this week, which means this absolutely could be the huge breakout game because that defense, it's vying for one of, if not the worst defenses in the NFL. Don't wait any longer. If he goes off this week, the buy low window is completely shut. And then Dalton Kincaid. This guy has been great this year for a tight end, for a guy you probably picked up off waivers. And again, somebody might have picked up Dalton Kincaid off waivers, and they don't really need Dalton Kincaid. If you need a tight end, if you're struggling at tight end, like you're streaming the Jonnu Smiths, the Chigo Conquos, just give me Dalton Kincaid in this Bills offense. And again, when we look at players being valued higher or around these guys, Nick Chubb, really? Nick Chubb? I mean, come on. If you could trade away Nick Chubb, do it. But what about Calvin Ridley? I hate to say it, but I think I would trade Calvin Ridley for all these guys. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen with Cam Ward. That connection isn't just there. And same with Travis Hunter. This guy's playing more defense than offense. I'll trade away Travis Hunter. And yeah, Jordan Addison is coming back this week, so I think this is a great time to sell high on Jordan Addison. I am not buying low on Jordan Addison. This Vikings defense is elite. They're not going to have a high volume passing attack. You got Jefferson, you got Hawk. Who knows if, when we get JJ McCarthy back, what does this offense look like again? I'm selling high on Jordan Addison if I can right now. And then somehow if you can trade a guy like Cooper Kupp, Keon Coleman, Jerry Jeudy, Isaiah Pacheco, if you could trade any of these guys for the guys I just mentioned, not sure you can, but if you can, I would absolutely do it. All right, there you go. Go make some trades. Go fix your team. But of course, also make sure you're tuned into Fantasy Endgame all week long. We're going to have all the content you need to dominate in week 4. You can find it in our playlist right here.